Stand up.
Hello, my friends. It is Friday, and the debate was last night, the first debate. We had a debate watch party. There was over almost 80 people there, and I'm sorry that I didn't get this episode up by 12. I was still hanging out. I think that we were together till a little past midnight. Thank you to JL Cauvin, who joined us and brought several of his listeners and subscribers. What I have for you this morning is basically an audio roundup, a montage of clips from across the internet, and it's a lot of what we heard from people last night and a little this morning. I don't know if any of these people are right or wrong. I think that the most important thing or contribution I can make briefly to the discussion is this. We know President Biden had a really worst case scenario evening, and a lot of smart people are saying that we need to fight for him, and one bad night shouldn't mean a thing. And, for example, Republican campaign strategist, is no longer Republican, Stuart Stevens tweeted, "Don't day trade politics. It's a sucker's game." And I definitely want to echo that. We don't know what is going to happen in our own lives today, in our own communities, our families, and our world today or tomorrow or at any point. Uncertainty is the thing that motherfucks all of us. I work every day to keep that in mind. So what I'm asking myself to do, and what I would ask you to do, is to try not to panic because we don't know what is going to happen, not today or not tomorrow. That's not easy. I panic. I'm not saying I don't. I'm saying that's what I think. That's what I work to try not to do, to stay in the moment and stay present. I think things are probably going to start shape up around what is going to happen with President Biden. And maybe he'll step down. Maybe he'll continue on. But we'll have more answers soon. I try not to spend too much time speculating about the future here on the podcast, too. But the only thing I have to offer you is this daily podcast, this community that we have built. And I hope that I can be here with you every day, no matter what happens. And if the ship goes down, I want to be on it with you. I said it to the folks last night. I want to be on it with you. That is what makes so much of my life so rich, is this work and the community that we've built around the podcast. So it feels scary. It feels crazy. It feels tenuous. Our lives are often crazy and in crisis, and that is hard enough. To see what is happening in the world only makes it that much harder. Obviously, it's all too much at times. Take breaks and take care of yourselves and keep finding practices and things that work for you to try to alleviate any of the suffering and anxiety that can perpetuate. But what keeps me going during times like this, after a debate performance like that, what we saw is this community and the people in this country, mostly, almost entirely, Carlo in Canada, shout out, retiring in 2 days, is this stand-up family. I love you guys. You've been there for me. I'm going to do my best to be here for you in as many ways and on as many days that I can. So with all that said, I put together this montage of clips and reactions. It's the best thing I think I could do at this point in the day. I'll probably drop more things and post a lot more today and throughout the weekend, including hopefully a conversation with John Fugelsang and Chris Brown from the Brady Anti-Gun Violence Organization, and maybe more. So thank you so much for pressing play. I hope that this is helpful to hear from this wide range of experts, analysts, pundits, some of which you like, some of which you don't, some of which you'll agree with, and much of which you won't. I'm going to be spending a lot of time reaching out to our trusted friends, experts, and analysts and talking to them and getting their takes, obviously. But here's what I've gathered for you. Let's start with the guy that a lot of people think should be and might be a replacement for President Biden if he does decide to step aside. It's Gavin Newsom on MSNBC last night with Alex Wagner. Let's start there.
You were out there getting a chorus of questions about whether Biden should step down. There is panic that has set in. There is panic that has set in among people who have watched this debate, who are Democrats, people who are strategists, and some even inside Democratic campaigns. Yeah. Do you think it's unfounded?
Well, I think it's unhelpful. And I think it's unnecessary. We've got to go in and got to keep our heads high. And as I say, we've got to have the back of this president. You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that? It's been a masterclass. 15.6 million jobs. That's 8 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. The only thing the last 3 Republican presidents have in common is recessions. Democrats deliver. This president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment. With all due respect, the more time we start having these conversations, go down these rabbit holes, it's unhelpful to our democracy, our fate and future of this country, the world. They need us right now to step up, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
All right, well, that is the perspective you're hearing from all of the, quote, surrogates. You'll hear Jasmine Crockett and others out there in support of Biden saying similar things, because one really fair and good point, Michael Cohen said this on Twitter, is, well, the Democratic Party is really just the dumbest political party. You've made a bad debate performance so much worse by piling on your own presidential nominee. And he was referring to this reaction from former Senator Claire McCaskill. He said, I honestly don't understand how Democrats keep making this mistake over and over. And of course, this is what she said.
Well, first, the easy part. Donald Trump is a liar, a flawed character, mean, a jerk, very unlikable, and that was obvious tonight. Now, the hard and heartbreaking part. I have been a surrogate for some presidential candidates in my time. I know what the job is after a debate of a surrogate. I've never wanted to be a surrogate more than I do right now. Because when you're a surrogate, you have to focus on the positives. But I have said very clearly and very plainly on this network, and my job now is to be really honest. Joe Biden had one thing he had to do tonight, and he didn't do it. He had one thing he had to accomplish, and that was reassure America that he was up to the job at his age. And he failed at that tonight. Now, does that mean that my phone blowing up with senators and campaign operatives and donors, big donors from all over the country, does that mean that Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate? I don't know that. I think we'll know a lot more in a few weeks, how this plays out, how the polling plays out. But I think a couple of things are going on right now. I think I'm not the only one whose heart is breaking right now. There's a lot of people who watched this tonight and felt terribly for Joe Biden. And, you know, you have to ask, how did we get here? How do we get to the point that we're spending a whole lot of time talking about the vice president tonight instead of talking about the president? And I don't know how the rest of this story is written. I don't know if things can be done to fix this. They might. And, you know, Trump is so terrible that this might heal itself. But based on what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and some of them are people that are in high elective offices in this country, and you might guess where they serve, there is a lot of more than hand-wringing tonight. I do think people feel like that we are confronting a crisis.
All right, and back at the panel at MSNBC, I thought this was uncomfortable, but also important, because what you heard from Rachel Maddow was the strategy of don't pile on. I mean, she was clearly concerned with what her colleagues Nicole Wallace and Joy Reid were saying. And so I think there was a clear disagreement. I think Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow did not think that it was helpful for them to be on TV piling on. And Joy Reid and Nicole Wallace, I thought, took a different tack. You decide for yourself if you heard what I heard.
That's a fantasy, saying that's, you know, you either need to right the ship or do the thing that's not going to happen, which is to replace him on the ticket. I don't think that's an option. But the fact that people are talking about it, if it's not an option, only seeks to further weaken the perception, weaken the standing of President Biden. The question is whether you're hearing that it is an option, that there is some viable means of doing it.
I spoke to an election lawyer. It is legal, and the way it happens is Joe Biden releases his delegates ahead of the convention, and you can't do it on the first vote, but I think on the second vote they can go somewhere else. So it is legal. It is possible. And I think when people say it won't happen, it's because they think Joe Biden would never do it for the reasons Joy already articulated. He's the only person who beat Trump. And he believes, and he has some reason to believe this, that he's the only one who can.
And to amplify that, someone actually sent me the rules. And so
the rules are circulating.
And so people are, and this is, again, this is not us saying that this is going to happen. No one is saying it's going to happen. It's very unlikely. But just to note that the Republican convention has 110 unbound delegates. The Democratic Party has 771 unbound delegates. Now, that does not mean that those unbound delegates will do anything. There are 3,000 delegates that happen on the first ballot. It takes 1,951 delegates to win.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 1,976 delegates to win. It's all a numbers game.
I mean, but doing the math of it only matters if it's going to happen.
If it's going to happen.
So the question is whether it's going to happen. And I think that David Plouffe's take on that is probably correct. And I think that Joe Biden's take on that is correct.
All right. Well, there is what I thought was a kind of weird difference of opinion on what they should be doing on TV and whether and how they should be supporting the president in the face of this horrible, horrible man who, of course, haven't really mentioned yet. And obviously, it's fair to say that the debate moderators didn't moderate, that they just asked questions. They were traffic cops. Everybody is piling on CNN for taking that tack. And I think that's a fair point, of course. And everybody is obviously talking about the disgraced former president being a horrific person. And Daniel Dale, of course, on CNN had this fact check, and it's like 3 minutes long, and it got tedious for me to listen to until I decided with every one of the lies, he gives you a very quick rebuttal. And I thought this might be helpful for some people who either buy in sometimes themselves to these lies a little bit, or they hear them from their relatives or friends or people on Facebook, etc. So here
the Trump list, it is way, way longer. So deep breath. He said some Democratic states allow people to execute babies after birth, an egregious lie that is illegal in every state. He said everybody, even Democrats, wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. Roe was supported by 2/3 of Americans, even more Democrats. He said every legal scholar wanted Roe overturned, abortion returned to the states. Legal scholars have told me directly this is not true. He said the U.S. currently has the biggest budget deficit ever. No, that happened under Trump in 2020. He said the U.S. currently has a record trade deficit with China. That also happened under Trump in 2018. He said Biden personally gets a lot of money from China. Zero evidence of this. He said there were no terror attacks during his presidency. In fact, there were multiple attacks. He said Iran didn't fund Hamas, Hezbollah, other terror groups under his presidency. Iran, in fact, did. He said Biden wants to quadruple people's taxes. That is pure fiction. He said the U.S. has provided way more aid to Ukraine than Europe had. It's actually the opposite. He said the U.S. has provided about $200 billion in Ukraine aid. It's closer to $110 billion. He said 18 or 19 million people have crossed the border under Biden. That is millions too high. He said many of these migrants are from prisons or mental institutions. His own campaign cannot corroborate this. He said Biden has only created jobs for illegal immigrants. Total nonsense. He said Nancy Pelosi turned down his offer of 10,000 National Guard troops on January 6th. There's no evidence she even got such an offer. It was the president, not Pelosi, who had the power to deploy the D.C. Guard. He said Pelosi now acknowledges she turned down the troops. No, her office tells me this claim is still a lie. He said he deployed the National Guard to Minneapolis in 2020. Actually, that was the Democratic governor. He spoke of, quote, ridiculous fraud in the 2020 election. Zero evidence of any widespread fraud. He said NATO was going out of business before he took office. Completely, clearly absurd. He said the U.S. was paying 100% of NATO before he came along. The U.S. made up about 71% of NATO defense spending, not 100. He said he, not Biden, is the one who lowered insulin prices in Medicare. He did it for some seniors, but Biden did it for far more. He said Biden indicted him. Again, no evidence Biden has had a personal role in any of these 4 prosecutions. He said Europe takes no U.S. cars. Just not true. He spoke of food prices quadrupling under Biden. That's a wild exaggeration, though they are up. He said Biden made up the idea he called dead service members suckers and losers. No, the Atlantic magazine reported that, and then former Trump chief of staff Jon Kelly corroborated it. He said Biden called black people, quote, super predators for 10 years. Biden never once deployed that phrase, let alone for 10 years, though he did at least once speak of, quote, predators without specifying it was about black people. He said his Trump tax cut was the largest in U.S. history. Not true, though, in fairness, Biden also said this. Trump said China and others stopped buying from Iran under him. China never stopped. He revived his pet lie, I don't know how many times I've done it, that he signed the Veterans Choice Program into law. Barack Obama did that in 2014. Trump signed an expanded version in 2018. And finally, Trump said Biden got rid of that Veterans Program. Biden has not done that.
Okay. There you go. That is just the fact checking. You also fact checked Joe Biden. It was like 3 things. And now I want to get to David Axelrod, who is a former Obama campaign guy and obviously worked in Obama in the White House. And he's on CNN with Scott Jennings and other Republicans who are supportive of Trump. It's so gross. But anyway, I thought this was an interesting exchange worth sharing, and I grabbed it.
I just want to say one thing, especially to you two guys. If for whatever reason there's a change at the top of the ticket, you guys are in trouble with Donald Trump, because the guy who was up there tonight is not a guy who's going to inspire people. He did not show in any way that he has changed from the guy who people don't have a very positive opinion of for a lot of good reason.
I think Donald Trump won several policy exchanges tonight. I think he did well on immigration. I think he did well on the economy. I think he did well on inflation. I think he went back to Afghanistan as he should have. The thing he did not do was, after he realized that he had Biden beaten on policy and on image, he should have turned the page and sounded an optimistic note about what we can become as a people and as a country. He did not do that. He continued to pummel Joe Biden all night. I understand what you're saying. But at the end of the night, very few things about the policy exchanges is going to be remembered. People are going to remember Joe Biden. They're going to remember him shuffling out. They're going to remember him staring blankly into the camera. They're going to remember him looking down, losing his train of thought. And they're going to remember that everything I thought I knew, but the White House told me don't believe my own eyes, is actually true.
But that's not what I'm saying. What I said, Scott, was if Joe Biden were not the candidate, if there was another candidate, I think Donald Trump would be in deep trouble.
Axelrod wrote a New York Times, I think, column calling for Biden to step down a long time ago and got absolutely savaged for it. But there he is last night. Now, one of the most trusted names in media, I think it's fair to say, is Jon Stewart. He was live on The Daily Show last night, and here's just a minute and a half of his.
Let me just say, after watching tonight's debate, both of these men should be using performance-enhancing drugs. I'm sorry. Both. As much of it as they can get, as many times a day as their bodies will allow. If performance-enhancing drugs will improve their lucidity, their ability to solve problems, and in one of the candidates' cases, improve their truthfulness, morality, and malignant narcissism, then suppository away. Guess what, everybody? They should be taking whatever magical drugs can kick their brains into gear, because this ain't Olympic swimming. You know what I'm saying? Oh, he solved the Middle East, but he was doping, so it doesn't count. There's going to be an asterisk next to his presidency. And by the way, if those drugs don't exist, if there aren't actually performance-enhancing drugs for these candidates, I could sure use some recreational ones right now, because this cannot be real life. It just can't. We're America. God.
All right, Jon Stewart on The Daily Show last night. Now, here is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who just joined me, 2 weeks ago here on Stand Up. She was last night in the spin room in Atlanta, spinning for Joe Biden, doing a pretty good job.
Tonight, we saw two things. People can choose between a con-in-chief or a commander-in-chief. And so what we saw was someone who sat up there and was acting as if he was some used car salesman that wanted to just tell us whatever and pretend as if it was fact. The reality is that our president submitted to you what looks like substance. The substance of the issue is simple. We have somebody that is bragging about the fact that he took Roe v. Wade away from us. Whereas we know the next step. They've gone after mifepristone. They want to go after contraception. And unfortunately, in the state of Texas, they're talking about instituting the death penalty. What the American people have to decide is that they're going to choose themselves. This election isn't about all of the lies that Trump is selling you. What it's about is the facts. The facts are that he took that right away from us, and he wants to take more rights away from us, and he did not shy away from it. Every time he didn't want to answer a question, he just decided to deflect. The reality is that people are dying. We had over 26,000 women that were impregnated in the state of Texas alone in the last year since the Dobbs decision as a result of rape. That is unacceptable. You all know the story of Kate Cox. You know the story of Dr. Denard. You know the story of women that are potentially losing their lives. And so there is only one clear choice, and that clear choice is Joe Biden and the blue team. And that's exactly why we're here.
All right, Senator, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett doing her very best to spin for Joe Biden last night. Here is Mehdi Hassan, who is now doing his own independent media thing. He calls for Joe Biden. He says Joe Biden has to step aside As always, he's got a pretty, I feel like, balanced take, and I thought this was good to include.
The CNN debate, Biden v. Trump, is over. That's 90 minutes of my life I'll never get back. We learned 3 things tonight. Number 1, Donald Trump still lies a lot. He lied all night long about infanticide, insurrection, Iran, and more. Number 2, the CNN moderators failed to fact check, failed to hold Trump's feet to the fire. It even took them 39 whole minutes to even mention Trump's support for insurrection. And number 3, Joe Biden's got to go. The Democrats need a new presidential candidate. And I say that as someone who has never said this before. I say that as someone who hasn't spent the past few months obsessing over Joe Biden's age or that he's too senile. In fact, I'm someone who said that Donald Trump is way more incoherent, way more demented than Joe Biden is. But not tonight. Tonight was a car crash for the Biden presidency, for the Biden campaign. It was painful to watch. At times, I'm sorry, it felt like elder abuse. You had the 81-year-old president of the United States, unable to finish his whispered sentences, looking like a deer in the headlights, unable to hit back against a convicted felon standing just a few feet away. This was the moment that I knew Joe Biden has to go.
Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Look, I'm not saying that Joe Biden is going to lose the presidential election because of tonight's debate. The race is still too ridiculously close to call at this point, but it's not looking good. And what I am saying is that you're deluded if you believe Joe Biden at this stage in his life is the best person the Democrats have to offer against Donald Trump, against a fascist. You're mad if you believe that. But there's still time, Democrats. There's still a convention to be had in Chicago. Because small d American democracy, if it is to survive, needs Democrats, big D Democrats, to put their big boy pants on and get their act together.
All right. We don't know exactly what that looks like or what's going to happen, but that's Mehdi Hassan. And the vice president was on CNN last night. She was with Anderson Cooper, and we watched this during the Hangout. I shared this clip, and more than a couple people said that he was disrespectful interrupting her. But here is Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, on CNN last night.
Joining us now is Vice President Kamala Harris. Madam Vice President, thanks for being with us. CNN's John King has described a panic inside the Democratic Party right now because of President Biden's performance in tonight's debate. He's been hearing from Democratic lawmakers and others around the country. Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
Listen, first of all, what we saw tonight is the president making a very clear contrast with Donald Trump on all of the issues that matter to the American people. Yes, there was a slow start, but it was a strong finish. And what became very clear through the course of the night is that Joe Biden is fighting on behalf of the American people, on substance, on policy, on performance. Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong. And
I'm sorry, on substance and policy and performance tonight, I mean, the president's performance tonight clearly was disappointing for his supporters. CNN is reporting Democratic lawmakers watching the debate were worried about the president's performance. One said it was a disaster. Another called it a train wreck. Those are Democrats especially worried that Biden did not punch back on Trump's lies.
Listen, people can debate on style points, but ultimately this election and who is the president of the United States has to be about substance. And the contrast is clear. Look at what happened during the course of the debate. Donald Trump lied over and over and over again, as he is wont to do. He would not disavow what happened on January 6th. He would not give a clear answer on whether he would stand by the election results this November. He went back and forth about where he stands on one of the most critical issues of freedom in America, which is the right of a woman to make decisions about their own body. He has been completely ambiguous and all over the place about where he stands on that issue, despite the fact that he hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And that's exactly what they did. And just 3 years ago, we commemorated the 2-year anniversary of Dobbs, wherein women across our country have been denied emergency health care.
All that may be true. All that may be true. But the president of the United States was not able.
Okay, well, there's more of that, and you can decide what you think of it. Of course, as always, here is CNN John King. This is one of the quick reactions I think a lot of people were referring to because of who John King is, I guess. Somebody said it last night at the Hangout. And what he was hearing, what his sources in the Democratic Party were saying to him last night on CNN.
In the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists. It involves elected officials. It involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket. And they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call? Because they feel this debate was so terrible. They do say in moments in the debate later, the president got better and got his footing, but then at the end, even his closing statement was a little halting. The contrast between the two candidates. Let me be clear. None of them, and a lot of Republicans, don't think Donald Trump had a great night. Donald Trump broke the fact-check machine more than I can count tonight. That will be on the record as we go forward. He refused to answer some very specific and direct questions about his conduct, about January 6th and what all. So that will be dealt with out there. And sometimes there's a parallel universe between the political elites and the American people. It'd be nice to see what the voters say. But I can tell you, it started minutes in. It started with the first couple of answers, and it has continued throughout the night from a, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God, to what do we do about this? And it involves very senior people in the Democratic Party, including elected officials, saying we have a problem.
All right, some of the reactions from last night that John King was getting. And here's this morning on Morning Joe, some of the panic. I think Joe Scarborough on MSNBC this morning. I cannot stand this guy. I don't like his takes, including this one and many others that I shared here with you today. I don't love, but here it is anyway, giving you as much as I can.
Well, I think I should start by saying, without any apologies, that I love Joe Biden and Jill, and I will gladly debate anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere over the issue of whether Joe Biden has been the most effective president in passing bipartisan legislation, in expanding NATO, and responding to the rising threat coming from China by flexing America's strength around China, by having the strongest economy in the world, bar none, the strongest economy actually relative to the rest of the world in 50, 60, 70 years, the strongest dollar in half a century. The strongest military relative to the rest of the world, I would argue, and many others would argue, since 1945. I think his presidency has been an unqualified success. If, however, you believe, as do I, and as do so many people who watch this program and who fear just how dark of a place a second Donald Trump term will take America, then I think it's critical that we ask the same questions about this man I love, respect, and whose public service in saving this country from Donald Trump over the last 3.5 years I honor and always will. I think we have to ask the same questions of him that we have asked of Donald Trump since 2016, and that is, if he were CEO and he turned in a performance like that, would any corporation in America, any Fortune 500 corporation in America, keep him on as CEO? If this were Donald Trump, time and time again, we talked about the Goldwater. Where's the Barry Goldwater? To walk over and tell Richard Nixon it was over, to tell Donald Trump it was over. And now the question is, do Democrats need to do the same thing of Joe Biden? I mean, these are hard questions.
All right. Well, finally, I've got Gareth Sever for you. Gareth is a very talented musician, singer-songwriter, dancer, performer. Buckets and Boards is his amazing group, and you can see them performing all over the country. bucketsandboards.com, by the way. He's at the Hangout, as he often is, last night, and he writes a song often, not always, but about what's happening during the conversation, what people said, and what we saw last night at last night's debate. The only context you need is our friend Kerry Williams, who was there, talked about his aging parents and how, while it had only been 6 or 7 months since he'd seen them, they'd aged a lot because they were in their late 70s, early 80s, and so Gareth references Kerry's dad. All the rest of it, I think, speaks for itself. It's a sad but funny song, and Gareth is just always awesome. So I thought it captured everything that we saw last night pretty well. I hope it gives you a little laugh, maybe a little tear. Take it away, Gareth.
I'm so sad. Biden did so bad. He's gotten even older, just like Kerry's dad. He seemed so fucking feeble, but then Trump seems fucking evil. I just feel so hopeless, the situation is unstable, like a fucking wobble-weeble. It's too late to replace him, so lift up the most elder statesman, carry him right up to the finish line, 'cause Jesus fucking Christ, Trump should be doing time. The lies, the lies, the lies. It's not about trying to compromise, 'cause Trump's a real asshole, and saving democracy is a real important fucking goal, and Biden is the best hope we got right now, even though he's so old.
Gareth, always great. Gareth Sever, bucketsandboards.com. Go support him, see him live. And that's it. That's what I've got for you. 30 minutes of reactions here in an audio format and a podcast. And later on, I'll have some of my favorite guests I'm hoping to reach out to get quick reactions to, and maybe I'll be able to produce that. Supposed to be talking to John Fugelsang, Chris Brown of the Brady Anti-Gun Violence Organization. I'll try to get that up over the weekend. I've got to drive Julia up to camp and back on Sunday. So we'll see. I appreciate your support and staying with me. I hope that you can find ways to stay positive, fight the uncertainty, and be on this ship that I call life with me on Earth One, where we will keep being here to support each other, to reassure each other, to challenge each other, to hold each other accountable, and so much more. I love you guys. I'm here for you. I know you're there for me. Thank you very much for your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic to join and keep this community going. And I'll talk to you later. Love you.
Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.